15, Civilizations of Asia. We're going to start by talking about Japan and Japanese civilizations. Clans are groups of families related through common ancestry, and Japanese society was organized around these clans. The first emperors of Japan came from the Yamato clan, but someone who held great power within this clan was called Prince Shotoku, who was a regent. If you remember when we talked about regents, that just means someone who's ruling in place of someone else until they're old enough. Shotoku was impressed with China, sending scholars to China to study over there, and he welcomed Chinese workers to come to Japan. So there's a strong Chinese influence on Japanese culture under Shotoku. Buddhism was brought to Japan from China, and a sect or a form of this Buddhism was called Zen, or Zen Buddhism. And it became very popular, which focused on self-discipline, simplicity, and meditation. Landowners called daimyo ignored the central government and were more like an independent ruler, who had warriors called samurai to protect them. During the late 1100s, military leaders called the shoguns took control and ruled on the emperor's behalf, but usually put their own interests first, ahead of the emperor. The samurai lived by an unwritten code called bushido, which called for honor, loyalty, and bravery, and believed that dying admirably was more important than a long life. This is an example right here of a samurai warrior. Now we move over to Korea and Southeast Asia. We'll start with Korea first, where a kingdom called the Koryo Kingdom modeled their government from the Chinese as well, and adopted farming and papermaking from them. The Joseon dynasty ruled Korea for over 500 years and established Seoul as their capital city. In Southeast Asia, we go over to what we now call Cambodia, right here, and the Khmer Empire. It formed on the Indo-Chinese Peninsula. That's this right here. So China's right up here, and the Southeast Asia is right just to the south of it. They built a capital called Angkor, and their most famous temple, a very famous temple, is built in that called Angkor Wat, which was a Hindu temple. That's the picture of it right there. The Viets were people who lived in what we now call Vietnam, right along here, and were conquered by the Chinese and treated very harshly by the Chinese. After breaking free from the Chinese in the 900s, an independent kingdom called Dai Viet formed and ruled for 500 years until they were reconquered by the Chinese. And we talked about this next group when we talked about the Byzantine Empire. They're the ones that conquered the Byzantine Empire. It's called the Ottomans, or the Ottoman Empire. Osman founded the empire in the early 1300s, and successors made it a very large empire through conquest, as you can see through the map here. The Ottomans' attitude toward conquered peoples helped to make their government more effective because they acted with considerable tolerance to those they conquered. Suleiman was known as the lawgiver because he organized laws into a legal code that could effectively govern the empire. In 1453, the Ottomans conquered Constantinople. Then they renamed it Istanbul and continued west, attacking the Holy Roman Empire, getting as far as Vienna, which is in Austria, until withdrawing. The last group we're going to talk about is the Mongols. They came from a land called Mongolia, which was right to the north of China, and they invaded China, and they conquered it. Genghis Khan, who you see here in the picture, organized their warriors and used tricks and brutal terror tactics to defeat his enemies. Led by Genghis Khan and his sons, the Mongols conquered the largest empire in world history. So, all in orange here is the Mongol Empire. The red is the Roman, which had been the largest empire. You can see how much bigger the Mongol Empire was. Genghis's grandson was Kublai Khan, and he moved to Beijing in China and formed a dynasty in China called the Yuan dynasty, then opened up China to foreign contact, including a guy named Marco Polo, who will actually come from Italy or Genoa, and he stays as a top aide for Kublai Khan for 17 years. That's the end of chapter 15.